Okay, a couple quick announcements just as we get started. Our main purpose today is to find out what happened to Frank and Nadine. And I want to say a little bit more about how to think about that in a minute. But before we get to that, I want to just get you oriented a little bit and make sure we're all pointed in the same direction. So I hope you all got my email last night that grades have been posted for the midterm exam. I stayed up last night and figured out how to create a tab delimited file just so I could post those last night at 8:30. And I'm happy to say I think I figured that out. If you got a grade that resembles what you think you got, then I did figure it out. The average score was right around 40, which is better than the last 6 classes that I've taught, so congratulations. If you want to see that exam, if you want to see what you did, let's find a way to do that. I have an appointment later today, if that fits your schedule. Otherwise, Emily is certainly available and can do that with you. The one thing I should say that I do when I look at the exam, so, I take all your Scantrons, stick a key on that, go to this office on campus, and then get files back indicating how well you all did. And one of the things I do is I check to make sure each item is a good item. And in fact, for every item on the exam, the vast majority of the class got those items right? So most people get most items correct. And your score comes from your ability to be the one who gets most items correct, as you might imagine. But the items were pretty good. And I think over the years, I try to throw out the bad ones and keep the good ones. And even if some of them are hard, I do keep them. So average score 40. If you want to see them, let me know, especially today. If you want to go over that with Emily, she is also able to sit down with you and can go over the entire exam with you. Keep in mind that the final exam, which will be on the last day of our class during week 10, is not a cumulative exam. I know you're disappointed in that. And I also want to say that I'm going to try to have more of a strategy-based review session. So for those of you who would have wanted to have done better on the midterm exam, or for anybody really, I'm going to try to have a session that allows us to have a back and forth exchange on the best way to take exams in general, like multiple choice tests, and also, I'll clue you in on the best ways to think about the material for that exam. I'll announce that probably as we, after the paper is due, right? So that'll be later in the quarter. I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have either in person now or by email about the paper. So I hope that's going well. You still have a week to finish that, so that'll be due in 1 week. I hope you're finding that to be a useful exercise, a way of connecting general information about relationships with a very specific issue and challenge about relationships. So let me stop here for a moment and see if you have any questions for me about where we are in the class. Okay. Yeah.
Are the teams here today to ask questions briefly about the paper?
You can come to me. We should have a little time after class today to do that. Okay. Emily, it turns out, is sick today, so she's not here today, unfortunately. Good question. Other questions? So I'll be around after class if you want to chat. Okay. All right, so I want to talk about Frank and Nadine. And I want to talk about, I want to remind you what the basic point of this class is, which is to, recognize that relationships are powerful, but to recognize that that power can flow in different directions. One in an uplifting, beneficial way, another in a downward spiral that leaves us wondering why we ended that relationship. And that's not to say that relationships ending are a bad thing. In fact, in many instances, they're a very good thing and even a necessary and natural thing. And ideally, it's a way for us to learn about ourselves and our lives. Yeah, question there? Yeah, question about the paper? Sure. Yes.
And I'm wondering if, do we just identify it and say, like, why we think it's identified, or do we also, does that mean go into, like, you know, because you kind of, in the book, you identify things, and then you say, like, how you can help it, or, you know, stuff like that. Is that saved for, like, the fourth paragraph?
Yes, that's saved. The advice part is saved for later, and the earlier part is taking a character type and matching that up with what you're seeing in the case that you're discussing. Okay? Yeah. All right, good question. Other questions, paper related? Okay, great. So the point of this class is to understand why relationships thrive and falter. And as we do that, lecture by lecture, chapter by chapter, etc., we have this piecemeal approach, right? We take a slice of relationships and we try to understand how people connect and get started in a relationship. Then we talk about how people maintain a relationship. We talk separately about their personalities. Eventually, after the midterm, we'll talk about conflict and how we resolve conflict. By the way, we're going to have 2 guest lectures next week. I will unfortunately not be with you next week. So, but Dr. Carney, my co-author on the textbook and my colleague here, will be the lecturer on Thursday. He'll be talking about aggression, the second half of chapter 8. And Hannah Williamson, an advanced doctoral student, will be lecturing on Tuesday of next week on the first part of chapter 8. Okay, so some guest lectures next week. So we have this piecemeal approach. We have it's what I think of as the Humpty Dumpty problem, which is we take all these little bits of scientific data, all these little bits of scientific knowledge, and then we teach them to you. But often we don't sort of pull back and say, no, wait a minute, we have this bigger question, right? How do we solve that problem in a bigger way? And that's why I want to show Frank and Nadine, not only because you've seen the setup, like whatever your take on them was, you have a lot of information that helps us to understand, and remember we did this from a theoretical perspective, what seems to be going on in their relationship. What was the nature of their relationship? It gave us the raw material in a way that cuts across a lot of chapters that helps us to anticipate, predict, think about where their relationship might go. And today I want to show you the second part, which is part of Married in America Part 2. This will be the follow-up on their case. Michael Apted, the director of Married in America, famous for the 7-Up series, and also famous for one of the Bond movies. I forget which one. Tomorrow is Not Enough. Is that a Bond movie? Yeah, he directed that one. Same guy did this. He also did Chronicles of Narnia. Same guy. He did this. And I had the absolute delight and pleasure to meet him for 3 minutes this past summer. He didn't say it at that time, but the people working with him on Married in America, they're now trying to do the next installment, Married in America Part 3. They have said that this is his favorite and most important project. So I'm really happy to be able to present this to you. So remember Frank and Nadine, and remember the theoretical perspectives that we use to discuss them. What did you, I know it was a long time ago, what did you think about their relationship? What would be the basis for making a prediction about their relationship or any relationship? What do you remember about them? Were you optimistic after you saw that video? Like, this is the couple that's going to make a go of it. They had the little girl, remember Jordan? The mom, Nadine, was a pharmacist, remember that? Frank was the guy trying to make a go of it in minor league baseball. He was going to get in shape and finally figure that out. He worked in a factory, hard work, but it was really, it paid well. He was involved in Jordan's basketball team. Remember, he was the coach. They were connected to their church. You remember all that? Were you optimistic or pessimistic about their future? Optimistic. Okay, good. This will be a great video for you because it doesn't go that way. By the way, I was totally optimistic too. Okay, what do you see? What are you noticing here? Frank says, more than anything else, I wanted to see my kids, right? They wanted to make this relationship work. It wasn't like they caved in. It wasn't like they didn't think it was important. This is really what they wanted, and it didn't work out. Why not?
They were both going through like really hard events, and so that was the key moment where they needed social support from each other. But for some reason, it just like didn't work out that way. So there was like no mutual support at all.
Right. So Frank's stepfather passed away. Nadine's mom passed away, and a baby arrives. Right. So we might think of the resources that they would have to manage those stresses and strains became more, the stresses and strains they had sort of outweigh their ability to contend with them. One of the things that I've come to believe is true in relationships is that the hardest thing to do is usually the most important thing to do. And the hardest thing for them to do, what do you think it was in those moments when two beloved people in their lives had passed away, a new baby on the way? What was the hardest thing for them to do? What's that?
Be there for each other.
Be there for each other. How hard can that be? It can be really hard. When two people are suffering, when two people are feeling like, wow, I need something right now, the most important thing, the hardest thing is to say, not how am I doing, give me attention. That's the easiest thing to do. The hardest thing to do is to reach out to another person. Isn't that amazing? That they want nothing more than to be together. He wants nothing more than to be a loving dad, take care of his kids. And the hardest thing to do, to reach out to another person, would have also been the most important thing to do. Do you think it's even possible? Like, is this just asking too much? Like, I don't want to blame them for their circumstances. I don't think I could have done any better. I'm not saying that. But do you think even if they had reached out to one another, that would have been enough? Or was it just so devastating, the events of their lives were so overwhelming? Nadine says, I was tired. I was just tired. And Frank said, and I left. Did you want him to leave? Yeah, I did. That's not what they wanted. That wasn't why they spent all that money on a wedding. That wasn't why they spent all that time trying to get to know one another and finding a way into one another's lives and wanting to be together. Do you think there's a world in which they could have risen to this occasion? And what would it have taken?
I mean, I think it's sort of like almost like a distribution of people and their ability to deal with traumatic events in their life. So if you have two people who were both very, very adept at dealing with traumatic events and didn't need that much support from each other, then maybe the little bit of support they could have given each other was enough. But I think for just the overwhelming amount of people, it's just too much trauma and huge life events.
It's too much, yeah. There are superhuman people who sort of muscle their way through this, but they might be in the minority. Other thoughts on this? Yeah. Yeah.
I almost feel like their relationship was really superficial to begin with. Like Nadine was really counting on Frank to like be there for her and like help her when her mom passed and like deal with that.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, I don't really know if I love you, but you're really helpful and you're good to me, so I'm going to be in a relationship with you. And he liked being able to like take care of her. And
Right.
I feel like that brought them together.
Right.
But when that was no longer possible, there wasn't really any glue.
So we might have wondered about whether they're as positive as my appraisal was of their relationship in the first tape that I showed in week 2, I think it was. We now might say, oh, it did seem good, but maybe there's another level at which they had to get connected. What do you think about that idea? Yeah.
I was thinking that maybe they could have, it's easy to say from the outside.
It's easy to say from the outside, exactly.
But that maybe they could have used the birth of the new baby to say, not that it's like reincarnation of the passing parents,
Yeah.
but just to say, here's this new baby, this is what our parents would have loved for
Yeah,
us to do, is
right.
to make a baby between
Right.
us and to really raise
Yeah,
them.
here's our legacy. Now this is our opportunity for a clean slate.
But
Yeah.
also to use it as like a merger rather than some
Yes, right. And instead of something that sort of was, it felt a little bit like the final straw, it felt instead saying, this is our opportunity. Let's join together over this wonderful, blessed moment and make the best of it. Hard to do, right? The most important thing, hardest thing to do. Other thoughts? I'm going to play more in a sec, but other thoughts? Yeah.
As much as they didn't want it to affect the relationship, his age really did, because she commented on that about how he wasn't actually ready. Like he was wanting to go out with his friends.
So part of this idea that there was a connection, but maybe it wasn't fully realized somehow. Like we can, I mean, this is totally going to freak you all out, by the way, when you think about your own relationships. You're going to say, I think it's pretty good, but does it have that special something? That's going to drive you crazy, right? And I'm sorry about that. But it does force us to wonder, right? And it also, I think there's another very human part of this, which is that who likes to contemplate how miserable and difficult our lives might be in the future? Like, who wants to do that? Like, so she would have had to say, okay, Frank's a decent guy, and he would have said, yeah, I like Nadine, we get along well, it seems to work out, whatever we heard in the first clip, right? There's a lot of good stuff here. Had these passings not all happened, and maybe all happened at once, this would be a different videotape, right? And so we have to appreciate the power of context, but we also have to wonder about if these sorts of adverse events, these sort of traumatic incidents happen in people's lives, especially the deaths of their loved ones. Do we really want to say, and can we even actually accurately answer the question, oh, if something horrific happens to me, Frank is going to be there. I'm certain of it. Even if something horrific happens to him. Wow, who can answer that question? Who wants to even contemplate that question? That's an amazingly difficult thing to answer, but it's also sort of exactly what we want from our relationship, right? Is that when the going gets tough, and we'll talk a lot about that in chapter 11 when we talk about stress, when the going gets tough, are we really going to be able to mobilize each of us individually and say, okay, I'm dealing with a lot of stuff right now. I'm dealing with a lot of stuff right now. How's your day going? You matter to me. Wow, that does feel superhuman, and yet I think it is what it would have taken to get them through this circumstance.
Teamwork.
What did you think of that moment? Social support, right? Right out of chapter 7. What'd you think about how they handled that? Yeah, right here. It's a little begrudging, yeah. Yeah, now that you've forced me to answer it on camera, yeah, you did good.
To me, there's like a lack of communication. Not like they're not talking to each other, but they're not understanding each other. Like when he was talking about how, like I need her to push me, and she pushes me, but she doesn't push me enough. She doesn't understand.
And she doesn't understand that. How do you understand? Yeah, up and back. So it's really sort of trying to minimize damage instead of maximizing growth and connection. Right. Yeah.
It looks like he kind of wants the opposite. He wants support, but he wants to see it happening. And maybe she is supporting the physical support, but it's not enough. And he doesn't realize that.
So he wants support, she offers it, and it's not enough? Is that what you're saying? From what she's getting from him, what he's getting from her is not enough.
Yeah. And maybe she is supporting him like under the radar, but I guess he just needs more, at least more fulfilled. He's just not getting that. But that started prior to the marriage.
Right.
So I think like they had problems to work on before, and they never got resolved. So it just kind of went into the marriage and just kept,
Yeah, and now the sort of the gaps that may not have seemed so significant as they were getting to know each other, now that starts to get revealed. Stress reveals gaps, I think is one of the ways I think about it. Do you think she supports, if you were Frank, do you think he gets enough support from her? Do you think Frank really feels, I actually believe him when he says, if she's got my back, I can do anything. I believe that is a real and powerful experience when you have somebody who really says, the world is your oyster. You can do anything you want and I'll help you. I think that's true. Do you think she gives him what he needs up and back there?
Right from the start, when he wanted to do the minor league baseball thing, she was not encouraging him to do that at all. But that's where his heart was, and you see that he gives it up again. So I feel like she does it.
Yeah, so he could have benefited from it and it's not there. But again, it's easy when it's somebody else's relationship, right? But hard when it's our own. So let's keep watching. I just wanted to get that moment because I think it was really pivotal in it. And for me, I also think that even though, what I love about that moment is that even though, we can sort of pull it apart and see gaps between them, it sort of says, it combines this idea that we were talking about when it comes to gender, which is this idea that men orient toward the hierarchy generally, but there's a lot of plasticity there. And he is saying, I can achieve a lot. I can scale up. I can move up and be successful and strong and good. But what I need is this connection, right? It's both of those parts. Like, I need the dyadic feeling. I need to know that you are with me and believe in me. And when I get that, I can believe in myself, and then I can try to achieve things. From her point of view, she says, well, maybe I've seen you fail at a lot of things, even as I've tried to give you as much support as I could. So I actually don't believe you, and I'm going to pull back. But I love how it sort of captures that idea where he's saying, I need this dyadic, horizontal sort of connection with you. I need that deep connection. And once I get that, then I can scale up in the ladder. I just think that's powerful. So he's asking good questions, right? I love the interviewing style here. What's it going to take? A lot of people would say, wow, this marriage is falling apart in front of me. I need to backtrack. And he's saying, no, seriously. A good interview says, what's it going to take? What are you going to have to do here? What did you think about that moment? Was that a evidence that this relationship is not going well? Or is the ability to laugh about how much patience they need a good sign? How do you read that? You saw that as good, yeah. Other people see anything else here? What about that moment where they talked about counseling, and he said, it's good that the important part about counseling is you figure out not just what you think the person needs, but what they actually need. What was he talking about there? Any guesses? Yeah, Luke?
She rolled her eyes, I noticed. And I thought his point was quite reasonable, that you need to find out from your partner what they want by asking them. I'm not sure what her inference from that was, whether or not she felt she was failing in some way, or she wasn't fulfilling the role that he wanted her to be. Because I think she then replied by saying, well, I'm your wife. But he said, yeah, but I want you to be the wife that I want you to be. I think it's a balance there between listening and then giving your partner what you think they should receive too.
Right. So she rolled her eyes. That felt like, whatever you just said, I'm dismissing. What do you think she was dismissing? Like, I agree. He said something pretty legitimate. In a good relationship, people try to figure out what each other's needs are, and then they try to, understand them and help provide for that. What was she responding to? Yeah.
Maybe she already thinks she's perfect in the relationship, and he's the one that needs work.
Oh, that he's flawed somehow? So she thought that she didn't have any issues? Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I think she's kind of like responding to, because Frank seems like he's asking for more support, but it's almost like the fact that he's asking for so much support seems a little, like it's huge. It's almost like he
Yeah. It's easy to see him as needy, right? It's easy because I think, by the way, so she was here, I think, and he was here. And he said that thing about, here's my theory of relationships. Here's what has to happen in a good relationship. And somewhere between his lips and her ears, guess what? There was a huge filter. That's the intimacy process model, right? The thing you say is not what your partner hears, right? And what she heard was, blah, 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 why don't you meet my needs? That's what she heard. And she goes, oh, please, I am busting my ass at my job, trying to raise these kids, and now I've got another kid that I need to take care of? Seriously? That's what she heard, I think. And she rolls her eyes and says, I come home, I'm exhausted, and he's got to tell me how much support he needs? And this is this imbalance in support, maybe, that's going on. I don't know that for a fact, but that's sort of how I'm seeing that. Yeah?
Coming from a single mother myself, I see your point of view as being more realistic. Because he wants all the support, and he's saying he has an answer to how they can fix a relationship by her offering him the support that he needs, but he's not offering the husband role or the father role that he should be.
And do you mean that from a financial earner point of view, like that he's not bringing enough bacon home? Yeah.
He's not really there for his kids as much as he should, and he's not really a husband, and he's just there.
He's just there. He's not sort of getting 100% of the way in. I think he wants to, but I also think he really does need her support. The other interesting thing about Frank there, it'll come to me. Other reactions? Other thoughts about what we're seeing here? Pretty interesting, huh? You really see the dynamics of what's going on in their relationship. I think if Frank said, here's how I think relationships work, is that people try to, they really have to communicate their needs to one another, and then they have to sort of put forth the effort to meet those needs, even in the hardest times, right? And if he then said, and what I try to do with Nadine is, that's something that's so important to me, but I think she said, oh, it's all about his needs. It's not about my needs, right? She was thinking like, I'm just getting ignored here. What I need is not important. He's got this theory, but it's a theory about him. And I'm not getting what I need out of this. All right, let's keep going. A couple more minutes on this. Okay, hands up if you think there's going to be good on the other side. A couple of you. How many of you, by the way, there is supposed to be a Married in America 3, and somebody knows the answer to this question of where Frank and Nadine are right now. In fact, I have the email of the person who knows because he produced this, and he won't tell me the answer. So I asked him. So what do you? How many of you think this is? They have really sort of reached the peak, and they're now going to sort of hold steady. The level of connection isn't going to grow, but I do think Frank will continue to be a good father. How many are a little more pessimistic about this? All right. Well, if we find Married in America 3, I will let you know. In the meantime, have a good weekend, and I will look forward to seeing you in my office hour today if you want to talk about the exam.